Today, I really wanted to talk to you about a book that should be read by every human on Earth, especially as we're growing up and moving through life. I think would just improve everybody's way of being. I reread it again after being diagnosed at age 54, and it just has a whole new level of meaning, a whole new level of impact. It's called The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz, and they are really agreements with ourselves in how we navigate the world and how we navigate relationships and our interactions with other people. And I think it's so interesting from the ADHD point of view here, but it's well worth it. And what I want to do today is just go over the four agreements and what they are. And so let's just jump right in. Today, we're talking about the mental noise that never shuts off. For ADHD brains, one comment can feel like rejection, one silence can spiral into a story, and one off day can feel like total failure. But what if there was a way to interrupt that chaos? And that's where the four agreements come in, not necessarily as rules, but as anchors. So let's break it down. Hey, it's Steve. Real quick before we begin. The single biggest thing I've learned about succeeding as an ADHD entrepreneur is that everything boils down to mastering your weeks. So if ADHD is making business harder than it needs to be, I've got something that can help. Grab my free weekly ADHD dashboard. It's a free, simple, but powerful tool to help you stay focused, organized, and in control of your week. The link is in the description below. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. I am Steve August. This is another episode of ADHD Entrepreneur Accelerator, and I'm freshly back from vacation, traipsing through Wales and England over the last week or so, leading into Labor Day weekend, and coming back into the office and getting started, and excited for what this stretch into the end of the year will bring. It's hard to believe summer is now officially behind us, although the weather here in Portland, Oregon is, in fact, summer-like. So today I really wanted to talk to you about, I've talked about this before and I've written about it, but I wanted to do a podcast episode because I haven't done a podcast episode on it in a long time. And it's a book that I've read multiple times, and I believe it's a book that should be read by every human on Earth. And especially as we're growing up and moving through life, I think would just improve everybody's way of being. And I, was a big fan of this book. It's called The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. And the thing is, I read it before, a number of times before I was diagnosed with ADHD at age 54. And now I've reread it again after being diagnosed at age 54. And it just has a whole new level of meaning, a whole new level of impact. And so the four agreements, the book itself, it's a little woo at the beginning, but it's well worth it. And what I want to do today is just go over the four agreements and what they are. And they are really agreements with ourselves, with ourself, in how we navigate the world and how we navigate relationships and our interactions with other people. And I think it's so interesting from the ADHD point of view here. And what I want to do is do a quick rundown, and I think it'll become self-evident, honestly, of why these agreements matter, especially for us with ADHD brains. And so let's just jump right in. Agreement number one, be impeccable with your word. Our words have power, especially the ones we say to ourselves. So ADHD brains can turn self-talk into a weapon. That inner critic that we have is ruthless. So awareness is the first step. When we notice the stories we're telling ourselves, we can start questioning them and replace judgment with compassion. So be impeccable with your word. So the word, as Miguel Ruiz says, is what we say either in our thoughts or in our actual voice to ourselves or to others and about others. And being impeccable with your word means like being good with it, being, staying away from gossip, and being good to yourself. And it's really interesting that you put this agreement first, because ultimately everything starts with the voice, the stories we tell about ourselves. And just thinking about that, okay, there's an opportunity here if something goes wrong or didn't go the way we had hoped, to really let ourselves have it. But I think this really urges us to see ourselves with compassion and understand that the word that we tell ourselves becomes our reality. And so we want to be very impeccable with the word. We want to be careful with it. Okay, So that's number one, be impeccable with your word. Number two is don't take anything personally. This is huge. And I read this before I had ADHD, is like we tend to take things very deeply personal. Now, part of ADHD is rejection sensitivity dysphoria, or RSD. So this one makes it really hard. When we take an input from the world and we get input that isn't necessarily as positive as we'd like, it's really easy for us to take that rejection really, really hard. But what I love about this agreement is what he goes on to say is that most of the time, it's not really about us. Other people are living in their own storylines, their own reality, and they're projecting their own reality on us. So the reactions really reflect them and not you or us. So it's just saved me so many times when I take input and I go right to that, hey, it's something I did, it's a problem with me, and try to figure out where I screwed up, where it's often just like, yeah, the things I did were reasonable, and my story making inside is taking this all very personally, when it really is about the other person projecting whatever it is they project on the situation, because we all have our voices and everything that we're acting on that impact us. Okay, so number two was don't take anything personally. Number three, another big one, don't make assumptions. This one might as well be tattooed on every ADHD brain. We are expert mental movie makers. We take a tiny bit of input and spin it in a dramatic internal saga, usually ending in some kind of doom or rejection or whatever. And often, if we slow down and take the time to understand better the other side of the situation, or the other side of the remark, or the other side of the context of how everything's happening, we'll see that it isn't necessarily the conclusion we jump to. And the antidote really is to slow down and get curious. And instead of assuming, we ask. And often the real story is very different than what we've created in our minds. Our minds are expert story creators and makers. We create these reality in our stories. And so often those stories don't match up with the reality that everybody else is experiencing. And if you go like an inch or two over to the left outside of our head, those stories cease to exist. So number three is that don't make assumption. That is a really good agreement. And number four, which I think is, again, really huge for ADHD brains, is always do your best. No more, no less. And I really love this because your best isn't a fixed point. It changes based on your energy, on your executive function level, on your stress level, on so many factors. So doing your best is going to look different on different days. And, one of the things I say in the weekly OS program is part of a good week is knowing the things that are most important, working on the things that are most important, and meeting your brain where it is. And I always do your best as an agreement is a way to navigate that. So those are the four agreements. And I really encourage you to read the book if you haven't already. And again, the four agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. No more, no less. So that's the thought for today. Not a huge on the business side of things for this episode, but this one is so fundamental to navigating life and relationships in a more positive and healthy way that I really wanted to do an episode on it. So that's what I did. So again, if you enjoy this episode or you found value out of it, please give me, take the time. I would so appreciate it if you could give it a review, a 5-star review, leave a comment, like, subscribe, all the things, depending on wherever you get it, your podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube. And until next time, I'm Steve August, and this has been ADHD Entrepreneur Accelerator. Talk to you real soon.